Today, we are going to be diving into Rookie Review Part 1, digging into that of quarterbacks, running backs, tight ends, getting you prepared and up to speed on these rookies. Guys, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share on all social media platforms, specifically YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Get ready, lock and load, we're diving in.
All right. Welcome to the show. This is the Frankly Fantasy Football Podcast. We are your hosts, Frankie and Johnny. Frankie, welcome back, brother. It is season 4 of the podcast. What do we got going on today, man?
Oh, man, we're going to be diving into some rookies, John. I mean, what? Like getting everybody acclimated to some new guys that could be new superstars. I'm excited as shit, man. What do you think?
What a great rookie class, man. I love these episodes every year because of all of the research you do, watching the films, watching comps and comp films. Because listen, man, this class, it's huge. There are going to be guys that we're going to be drafting that are rookies. We've seen the impact that some of these guys can have immediately in the NFL. And I think this is going to be great, man. We got a couple of quarterbacks, we got a running back or two, and we got a tight end that's going to be a top pick too, man. Yeah. All right, thank you so much for joining us, everyone. Please don't forget you can follow us on social media, Instagram at Frankly Fantasy Football, Facebook and Twitter as well. But don't forget, guys, I know everybody listens to us on Spotify and Apple and Google. Don't forget to watch on YouTube. This year, we've got some additional technology, some new platforms here. We're going to be showing some films. We're going to be doing some graphics. And you know what? You get to look at us, too. It's not half the bad. Look at Frankie. He's beautiful. He's beautiful. What a baby face. I know. All right, man. Let's get right into our rookie review, okay? Frankie, the first guy that we're going to be introducing here, everyone, to is Brock Bowers, tight end for the Las Vegas Raiders. Brock Bowers is 6'3", 245 pounds. Love watching this guy play. Frankie, break it down for us. Tell us a little bit about Brock Bowers.
John, Brock Bowers is absolutely one of those guys that are going to get drafted in fantasy football leagues. Guys, this is somebody that we need to drill in on. So let's give a little bit of background into his current situation. He's on the Las Vegas Raiders, as you mentioned, and he's walking into a fairly great situation, John. Right? He has Devontae Adams. He also has Meyers there, who was already drafted from Notre Dame last year as a tight end. So they're going to be able to run some good quality 2 tight end sets. And then you bring into the fold the running back situation, right? To where they have Zamir White, to where they have now Alexander Madison. And here's the interesting thing that nobody's really talking about, man. It's the quarterback situation. Why is this interesting? Because the reality situation is they don't have elite quarterbacks, dare I say, not even that great of quarterbacks. So what this means, man, is tight ends are going to be that safety blanket for Gardner Minshew or Aiden O'Connell. Whoever that is going to be able to get the rock to the tight end. So let's talk a little bit more about Brock Bowers, man. So since 2000, this is crazy. There's only been 5 tight ends actually selected in the top 10 picks in an NFL draft. He's now the 6th. So when you start trying to understand how good of a player this is, it never happens that a tight end goes in the top 10. So, John, let's talk a little bit about a comp here, man. And one comp that comes to mind to give you listeners and viewers somebody to kind of attach whoever the hell we're talking about to, this case it being Brock Bowers, his comp, man, is going to be George Kittle. John, the reason why is because when we start looking at George Kittle's route trees, when you start looking at the way Brock Purdy and other quarterbacks, right, have gotten the rock to that of George Kittle, and then you start looking at side-by-side comparisons, especially on the film, I mean, dude, it's almost like a carbon copy here. Very similar size and stature, very similar route trees, and honestly, very similar types of weapons from a receiver perspective around. I didn't even mention Jacoby Meyers. I didn't even mention Trey Tucker for Brock Bowers on the Vegas Raiders, in addition to Devontae Adams. You think about that at the 49ers, you got Deebo Samuel, you got Brandon Ayuk, right? And now you have Ricky Purcell. You have some of these other guys that are coming up, and John, it's a good situation. So for me, man, When you look at a guy, Brock Bowers, who put up 56 receptions last year, 714 yards and 6 touchdowns, and you look at that comp to that of George Kittle, it's a match made in heaven.
Let's look at it from a fantasy perspective here now, Frankie.
Cool.
So Brock Bowers is being drafted. His ADP right now is about 101. That's about 8th round. He's the tight end 11 off the board.
Okay.
That's a starting tight end, man, in a 12-man league. So we're looking right around the same tier and range of an Evan Engram, David Njoku, Dalton Schultz, Pat Freiermuth, TJ Hawkinson. I mean, there's a lot of guys there that are pretty talented and proven guys. So when you're on the board and you're looking at round 8, you're like, all right, now's the time I want to grab my tight end. When you're looking at those guys he's around, how are you breaking that out? I mean, are you willing to take a risk on a rookie like that when you're in that position?
Great question, John. For me, man, it depends. If Evan Engram or David Njoku's still on the board, that's who I'm going with. I'm going with tried and true. I'm going with guys that had career years in the last 2 years. That is who I'm going with. When you start bleeding into that of the Fergusons and the Freiermouths, right? The Firemouth here, the Steelers, that's where I'm going to be willing to take a risk. Because the reality of the situation, man, is it's not going to be that difference in a discrepancy from top to bottom in regards to those guys in terms of their ceiling output in fantasy football, right? So for me, man, that's when you can take one of those guys. You might be playing the tight end game anyways, so why not get the number 1 tight end out of this draft and arguably the best tight end prospect since that of Kyle Pitts? So for me, man, I would be willing to take a risk on drafting somebody like that of Brock Bowers over that of some of the other cats, as long as for me, it's a teardrop from Evan Ingram's and Njoku, and then after that is when I'd be willing to take that risk.
Are you worried about the quarterback play at all? I mean, right now it's looking like it's Aiden O'Connell's team at the moment. That might be the best option for them for their future anyway. I think Gardner Minshew is only on a 1-year deal anyway. Do you see a difference really between Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew as far as Brock Bowers' value?
You know, John, I do slightly. And actually, for me, I do see it more geared towards that of Gardner Minshew. The reason being is because Gardner Minshew targeted Jelani Woods often, right? Gardner Minshew did a lot of exciting things around the red zone as well, specific to his tight ends, versus that of Aiden O'Connell, to where a lot of his his red zone threat was Devontae Adams. And a lot of the middle of the field was more Jacoby Meyers. So when I'm thinking about the difference in quarterback play, certainly I agree with you. Aiden O'Connell absolutely could be that guy in the future for that of the Las Vegas Raiders if he gets the head nod. If it's Gardner Minshew, I think for me that's even more exciting for Brock Bowers, because he's just been known to be the guy that absolutely has targeted that of number 1, his number 1 receiver, but more importantly, in this particular instance, that of tight ends.
Let's talk a little bit about Caleb Williams, the number 1 overall pick in the draft here, quarterback for the Chicago Bears. He's 6'1", 214 pounds, runs a 4.56 40. Frankie, talk to us about Caleb Williams.
Yeah, man. I mean, Caleb Williams, John, he's an unreal talent. I mean, that's the reality of the situation. Yeah. And honestly, there's parts of me that kind of are like, oh God, do I even really want to say that out loud? Here's what it is, man. Let's bring it back to his 2022 year. What was that? Well, he won the Heisman. What did that look like? Well, John, he had 4,500 passing yards, 42 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, 382 rushing yards, 10 rushing touchdowns. Unbelievable. He would have been a top 2-3 pick if he had gone out of college that year. Decides to stay. And so what did he put up in 2023 last season, John? He regressed a bit, but not by much. 3,600 yards passing, 30 touchdowns, still only 5 interceptions, 121 rushing yards, and 11 rushing touchdowns. John, on top of this, he goes to the team that arguably won the entirety of the offseason. What the Bears did and what Ryan Poles has done for that particular team is nothing short of incredible. Bringing in Keenan Allen, right? Getting rid of Darnell Mooney in a good way, not saying like, hey man, get the hell out of the team. Saying, hey, he got signed, he got paid somewhere else. So you know what we're going to do? We're going to draft another top tier receiver in that of Rome Odunze. And then, by the way, you still have Tyler Scott, the burner, who will absolutely be a part of 4 receiver sets. And then you have the bona fide number 1 and that of DJ Moore. Then, John, they add in DeAndre Swift, which, again, a lot of these guys we're going to be talking about in our New Faces and New Places episode. So we'll get into the nitty gritty. But when you start looking at how this offense has been revamped in comparison to last year or the year prior, Caleb Williams is walking into maybe the best situation ever from a first pick overall team coming out of the draft. Usually these teams are dog shit. That's why they have the first pick. This is not the case for the Bears. And John, Caleb Williams is absolutely somebody that you have to pay attention to this year. Now, when we start looking at comps, right? Who the hell does Caleb Williams remind you of? His play style. There's really two guys. And it's a mix of both. And it's crazy I'm saying this, so stay with me here. First guy is Aaron Rodgers. When you look at Aaron Rodgers being able to throw off of his back foot, and you see the trajectory of the football and the ability to loft that ball, John, there's few people that can make that throw. Caleb Williams is one. Then you think about the arm angles. The way he's able to maneuver his arm, the only person outside of Aaron Rodgers that I'd actually seen this from is Patrick Mahomes. And so I get that I'm throwing out two Hall of Famers. I get that I'm throwing out two MVPs. But John, that's how good this guy is. So for me, man, I really think these comps are legit. And I really think there's a lot of excitement around what Caleb Williams is going to bring to this Bears team.
Those are great comps, man. I mean, it is a bold take to say, oh, who do I compare this rookie player who's never had a snap in the NFL?
Yeah.
No big deal, just Aaron Rodgers and Patrick Mahomes. But it's true, man. I mean, yeah, no big deal. We're watching films, and the more of what I watched on him and his highlight film, man, you're right. I mean, he looked like when the play, he's a true pocket passer. He can stand there. He doesn't get happy feet, and he can do an Aaron Rodgers and just plant that back foot in any situation and launch, man. The other thing he does when the structure of the play breaks down, this is where I think he's at his most impressive, is that he can get out of the pocket. He can make things happen. He's still looking downfield. Yes, this dude can run. Make no mistake about it. This guy can run. He is a mobile quarterback, and he will get some fantasy points on the ground for you. But he's looking downfield, much like a Patrick Mahomes. He can do it. He'd rather throw the ball. And with that receiving core, with DJ Moore and Keenan Allen running roughshod right through the middle of the field, he's going to be open, man. So you're right. I mean, the situation that this guy is in, I normally do not go for rookie quarterbacks on fantasy football. They never, ever return their value in fantasy, especially their first year. But I think this guy's a little bit different, man. I think he's just in a different situation. All right, so let's look at fantasy-wise exactly. He's going 96th overall in ADP, so he's the 13th QB being drafted. So he's just outside of the top 12 quarterbacks. So he's in that consideration for sure. He's going around round 7, round 8. Frankie, is this a guy, can you wait on quarterback and look in round 7, 8, 9 and try to snag Caleb Williams as your one? Are you comfortable with that? Because that sounds like a huge risk to me.
Yeah, absolutely, John. I think that you can. I think it's definitely worth an opportunity. But if you do that, if you decide to make that move, it is a risk. You got to draft another quarterback. You have to. You have to be able to draft another backup because, Caleb Williams might actually be you drafting your backup before your starter. That could absolutely be how that unfolds because you're looking at a CJ Stroud opportunity in the back half of the year, right? And so now you have all this trade value. So if you go this path, man, it's going to be a Jared Goff, right? You're going to take Jared Goff. Take him with it. Take a Justin Herbert with it. Shit. Take an ADP of, an ECR experts consensus rating of Aaron Rodgers being the 20th overall quarterback. Guys, if you're willing to do this, which I absolutely am in a single quarterback league, John, to take a risk on Caleb Williams, I'm going to sit back and wait, and I'm going to get one of those other guys I mentioned and one of my last picks, and there I'm not stressing out as much. The other interesting item is Superflex. For those that are in a 2-quarterback league, this dude is gold. Whether you're looking at him as your QB2, whether you're looking at him as your QB3, if you want to draft a third QB, guys, this is a person, again, it goes back to CJ Stroud. It goes back to some of these other guys that I think that is where his play could be. Look at Anthony Richardson. Before he got hurt, he was top tier, right? And so because of his rushing floor. So what I'm getting at is, man, this is absolutely somebody who, if you're looking at taking a risk on, number one, you got to draft another quarterback. But in a 2-quarterback league, absolutely brilliant to take Caleb Williams. I think that can only help you and your team.
Okay, let's talk about another quarterback here. The second quarterback taken in the draft here, Jayden Daniels, quarterback for the Washington Commanders. All right, Jayden Daniels is 6'4", 210 pounds, runs a 4.49 40. Frankie, talk to us about Jayden Daniels.
Dude, Jayden Daniels came out hot, John. And what people don't know about this cat, man, he didn't come out of nowhere. And what I mean by this is he has been in the NCAA for almost 5 years. Started off at Arizona State. By the way, played with Brandon Ayuk. Fun fact there. So there's a little bit of something maybe dabbling around. But then on top of it, he goes to LSU, right? And within LSU, John, he looked like Burrow in terms of the progression from 1 year to absolutely becoming a dominating force in college football. He ended up having 3,800 yards last year, 40 touchdowns, and only 4 interceptions. Not only is that just impressive if you're playing in, right, MAC, which, fun fact, I played for the MAC, but when you're playing SEC teams and you're playing Bama, and then you're going and playing some of the top-tier ACC teams like Florida State when they had their players healthy, dude, he looked amazing, man. And then you layer on his rushing capability. We saw, and what we talked about was Caleb Williams having some rushing capability. Jayden Daniels takes this to the next level. What do I mean by this? 1,100 yards. 1,100 yards rushing last year. 10 rushing touchdowns. And John, he became the first player since 1996 to lead the NCAA in both yards per pass attempt, which was 11.7, and yards per rush, which ended up being 8.4. John, this guy is unbelievable. He was the only player in FBS history, to throw for 12,000 yards and rush for 3,000 yards. Okay, so now let's talk about the situation he walks into, right? He's walking into Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, Luke McCaffrey, Austin Ekeler, Brian Robinson, Zach Ertz, and a completely revamped front office. John, this isn't going to be the same Commanders of before. This is going to be a team that, with Jayden Daniels at the helm, is absolutely somebody who could be a force to be reckoned with. Now let's take a step back. Who does Jayden Daniels remind me of? Who does Jayden Daniels remind most people of?
I think you're going to get a little crazy here, Frank. I have a feeling. I have a feeling this is going to be like, do we have a hype train button yet? If we don't yet, we need to get that.
Right?
If we do, I want to put it right here because the hype train is rolling right now. I can feel it.
Right, dude, exactly. We're talking Lamar Jackson, John. Woo! He's a slightly slower Lamar. Two-time MVP, absolute dominating individual in that Lamar. So, yes, it's kind of like you're comparing Caleb Williams to Aaron Rodgers and Patrick Mahomes in certain aspects. Same difference with Jayden Daniels with the Lamar. John, the reason why this makes sense is because of Lamar's elusiveness, what he did when he actually won the Heisman and things like that at Louisville, what he was able to do in college and completely dominating and taking over games, while also stretching the field with some of his top receivers. So for me, man, it makes a lot of sense for this comparison. Now, the only question is, can the Commanders keep Jayden Daniels upright and fortify that offensive line enough to where you're not having a Sam Howell situation and running for his life every time? But I love this cat. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, with Jayden Daniels, I mean, right now, ADP's 107. I mean, he's really going right around the same range we just talked about with Caleb Williams.
Yeah.
In fact, I think he's a spot or two above Caleb Williams, and I think it's the rushing floor. He's going around 8, 9, right around that range, QB 17 off the board. Now, when you're looking at Jayden Daniels, I mean, he is one of my big concerns is exactly what you said, keeping him upright. The dude does seem to look for his first read and then immediately take off. I mean, very Lamar-esque. Lamar earlier, not Lamar last year MVP. Lamar has definitely developed in his game. But I see him as a young Lamar to where that first read wasn't open, Mark Andrews was covered, and boom, he was taken off. I think Jayden Daniels is very similar to that, and he does take shots. He's not a huge guy, and he does take some shots, man. I mean, that's one thing that is very concerning. We saw that with Anthony Richardson last year, everybody all over him because of his rushing.
Yeah.
Sure as shit, the guy took some shots, and he's a big dude. So that is one concern I have. I mean, as far as fantasy goes, is this a guy you're looking at taking a chance on? You're looking at him being, you don't have to draft him as your QB1. That's the
No.
nice thing. But is this a guy you're taking as a backup to a high-profile quarterback that you may have taken? Or is this a guy in a super flex you feel good as having him starting as your quarterback too? Where are you going about your thought process with Jayden Daniels?
John, for me, I think it's a yes and a yes to both of your questions. Yes, he's a guy I'm willing to take a risk on. No, am I not drafting him to be my immediate starter in a one quarterback league. This is a guy, again, that if you're drafting Caleb Williams, you have to have another anchor piece from a quarterback perspective. I'm not saying you got to go up and get CJ Stroud, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen. What I'm saying at is look at Matthew Stafford, look at, again, a Jared Goff, a Tua, to where you know their floor is above that 250 limit, right? Think of it in terms of fantasy points, right? A good running back, John, outside of CMC is going to get you mid 250s. A really good quarterback is going to get you up to upper twos, low threes. That is where if you can find a super high floor guy to pair with one of these dudes, yes, take it and go with it. 2-quarterback league, I have no problem. I have no problem rolling him out as your number 2. I have no problem if you want to take another quarterback and let it ride. Maybe it's an Aiden O'Connell, a Gardner Minshew, somebody like that, just to have a little bit in your holder in case something like with Anthony Richardson last year, man, like how that could happen to Jayden Daniels. Because you're right, he does take shots, and he has taken shots at LSU. And you don't want something like a Jordan Travis issue from Florida State last year happen, and then it blows up the entire team, because that is what will happen. Everything for the Commanders at this point is riding on Jayden Daniels. Their success is riding on Jayden Daniels. They don't have Sam Howell even as their backup anymore. Shit, they don't even have Jacoby Brissett anymore. So literally, man, this is it. And so for me, I like that. I like it a lot because they're investing everything around him. So for me, though, I got to make sure that I'm also getting another type of quarterback to help out as well from your fantasy team. But yeah, man, I'm definitely not afraid to draft these guys, either Caleb Williams or Jayden Daniels.
And we've got other guys relying on him as well. I mean,
Yeah.
It's been a while since I felt good about starting Terry McLaurin,
Same.
Dodson. I
Yes.
mean, can we please get some value out of these guys? I want to see them elevated as well. But I'm still nervous to draft those guys. I mean, you can get them at a really good discount, so that's the good news about it. Even an Austin Ekeler. I mean, after watching the Jayden Daniels film, I'm going, Austin Eckler's rising up on my board a bit. They're going to run
Same.
Brian Robinson, I think, first, second down. But I
Totally.
think Austin Ekeler is really going to be a nice cozy blanket for Jayden Daniels. I mean, it plays right into his game. So that we'll have to see as after the offseason progresses a little bit. But some of those guys might be rising up my board after what I've seen with Jayden Daniels. Frankie, let's talk running back. Rookie running backs here. Jonathon Brooks, running back for the Carolina Panthers. I love this running back, man. He just reminds me of an old school Eric Dickerson type runner, 6
Ooh,
foot.
good drop.
You like that one? Yeah, pulled that one out, baby,
like
out of the
that.
archives.
Yeah.
6 foot, 216 pounds, runs a 4.54 40. Frankie, introduce us to Jonathon Brooks.
Jonathon Brooks was, for those of wanting to learn a little bit more, he was the backup to Bijan Robinson at Texas. So what that means is the dude has played serious level talent, has learned from Bijan Robinson, and was able to do a lot of good things for Texas until his ACL issue back in November. So let's just talk about the situation he's in, right? He's in Carolina. What does Carolina have? They are dog shit. They are really bad. I mean, really bad. And so he also has Chuba Hubbard, who definitely is not as athletic, is a nice way to say it, or should I say well-rounded running back is what Jonathon Brooks is. But Chuba Hubbard still had 902 yards, 5 touchdowns last year. So if you start thinking about Jonathon Brooks and maybe you plug him into the same situation, knowing that, in his last year, he was second team all Big 10, 12 or all Big 12 conference. He ended up having 1,100 yards, 10 touchdowns, 25 receptions, almost 300 yards receiving and a receiving touchdown. With the receiver type of hands that Jonathon Brooks kind of has, man, I think that Jonathon Brooks could step into this role and absolutely dominate. Now, let me be crystal clear here. You would be drafting, and we'll get into this in a second here, John, but you're not taking Jonathon Brooks right away, man. to have him potentially start right away. This is a guy that we'll look at towards the back half. And so I know we'll hit on that. But who's a good lookalike? Who brings this Jonathon Brooks comp to life? And there's one guy, man, when it was eerily scary how similar the routes that they were running, the way that they caught the ball with the hands and not the body, and the way that they cut internally within the holes from gaps pretty much 3 to 5, right? Basically the 2 guards, things like that. John, it's Aaron Jones. This dude is like a carbon copy, young version of fucking Aaron Jones here, man. And to give you some aspect, Aaron Jones' rookie season in half PPR, he had 80 points. And so I don't think that that's completely out of the realm for Jonathon Brooks. I actually think Jonathon Brooks will eclipse that probably by double if he gets the opportunity. So for me, man, I think that, yes, it's a tough situation with the Carolina Panthers. Yes, they've been the worst team for the last 2 to 3 years in the NFL. But let's just say this. You can pick Jonathon Brooks up. You draft him on your team. You now have Bryce Young with an additional year. They're revamping some of the offensive line. You draft and bring in Xavier Leggett. You brought in Deontay Johnson to help spread and widen the field now. You also have that of Jonathan Mingo and Adam Thielen. So this offense is already better than last year by a lot. And so now you bring in a running back who was a superstar who unfortunately got hurt. And so now if he comes back to form, man, Jonathon Brooks could be amazing on this team. So I really, really like where he could be heading in for the Carolina Panthers.
Well, the good news is with Jonathon Brooks, I mean, the injury's baked in. I think if he came into this season fully healthy, he would obviously be a much higher draft pick here. But you're getting him at about 90 overall, ADP. He's the running back 29 off the board right now. So I like that. Round 7, round 8. So now we're looking at, taking Jonathon Brooks as your running back 3, your running back 4. You're looking at guys around him are going to be, very similar situation as Nick Chubb. Gus Edwards, Austin Ekeler, Tajay Spears. Are these, how are you looking at when you're going to draft and you're looking at Jonathon Brooks on the board in the tier with those guys? Where do you want him? What kind of roster construction do you want to have so you can pull the trigger on Jonathon Brooks?
John, I don't want to have to start Jonathon Brooks. I don't want him to be my RB2 in the beginning of the year. What I want, and you named a couple guys, like Nick Chubb, for example. I'm drafting Nick Chubb over him. You named the first guy. Who was the first guy that you named as well prior to Nick Chubb there, John? If you remember. And I know you've mentioned Tajay Spears.
Gus Edwards, Nick Chubb,
Edwards,
Zeke Elliott.
I'm taking Gus Edwards over Jonathon Brooks because I think the floor is a little bit higher there. That's the only reason. But over Tajay Spears, over Zeke, over things like that, absolutely you're going to take Jonathon Brooks. And John, again, this is a wait and see. Is he going to form into, now understand what I'm saying? I'm going to say Amon-Ra. I'm not saying the Amon-Ra that just got fucking paid, right? And he's performing the way he's performing. I'm saying rookie Amon-Ra, who showed nothing first half of the year, dominated back half of the year. I'm talking about Garrett Wilson. Great or nothing first half of the year, dominated back half of the year, rookie season. So, John, that is the same mindset that you need to be in when you are drafting that of Jonathon Brooks. So what you would need to do from a roster construction standpoint, John, in a perfect world, you're thinking round 7, round 8, based on his ADP and his ECR. Guys, you need to have established a core running back. And then if you want to go receiver, tight end, QB, for me, man, you got to go back-to-back running back at that point. You can't just solidify Jonathon Brooks as your RB2. Because you think about it, if you draft a running back in first round, then you go receiver second, receiver third, then you go tight end 4, you go QB 5, maybe you go receiver 6 again, right? Because now you have a couple flex positions. Now you're looking at running back. You can't have him be your solid RB2. There's already too much competition. He's a rookie in a tough team. So for me, man, no drafting him. You're drafting him knowing that you're waiting for the back half, and I think you'll be really happy.
I think he's one of those guys like a Nick Chubb. You can't draft both of Nick Chubb and Jonathon Brooks because you're just going to have plugs in your roster. You can't sit on those two guys. But it is going to take him a few weeks to get going, but it is really interesting. I will absolutely take a chance on him as my running back 3 or 4.
Definitely.
But also loading up on a few more to back up to make sure.
Yes.
Probably 2 or 3 back-to-back after taking Jonathon Brooks, because you've got to have that security. But mid-season, yeah, man, I mean, this is where you could really see him do some work. So I'm excited to see him, man. It's going to be great. Okay, running back, Trey Benson, running back for the Arizona Cardinals. 4.39 speed, so the guy's fast, 6 feet, 216 pounds. Frankie, introduce us to Trey Benson.
Yeah, man, Trey Benson, guys, this was a top-tier running back for Florida State. He's actually had back-to-back years of over 900 yards rushing. John, last year he had 906, 14 touchdowns, 20 receptions, 200-plus yards receiving and a touchdown. And his versatility is going to be huge for that of the Arizona Cardinals. John, I'm not saying he's David Johnson, but I'm saying there are elements of that vibe in Arizona, of the versatility that could be done with a David Johnson-esque, right? And so what's really cool within Arizona too, man, is the situation that he's in, right? You got Kyler Murray healthy. You got Marvin Harrison Jr. on the outside, right? Which is already light years better than what they had last year. Then you have Trey McBride, who is a up-and-coming megastar at tight end. And then you have James Conner. What's interesting about James Conner being there, John, is that he is and had one of the best performances in the back half of the year last year. If you had James Conner, more than likely you were in the playoffs in some aspect of some way. But here's what always happens with James Conner. He's always missing time because of his run style. He is a brute. He does a very good job, but he's constantly getting banged and battered. So what this means is Trey Benson is a phenomenal change of pace. Arizona tried to find that in Chase Edmonds and couldn't get it. They tried to use a few others that just couldn't get it done, like a couple other rookies of the last couple years, and it wasn't right. Trey Benson is that complement that they've been looking for to that of James Conner. So for me, man, when we take a step back, right, you look at, well, what is this comp? His comp to me is he's actually a slightly bigger Kenneth Walker III, KW3. And when you look at what Kenneth Walker has done when he's been healthy, John, he has been incredible. Very, very good. Great vision, explosive, and a showcase of burst and what he's able to do. And then you look at Kenneth Walker III and you see what he did at Michigan State and even his rookie year for Seattle. John, it's almost like it's a mirror. You're seeing the same exact shit. So for me, I think it's a very good comp. And I think that understanding that you're going to be going against that. If you draft Trey Benson, you're going to have James Conner. So this is another situation to where a perfect example in terms of a comp, John, not in terms of play style, but in terms of situation, Tajay Spears and Derrick Henry. That is how I see this playing out this year for that of Trey Benson. It's going to be James Conner as the brute, and it's going to be Trey Benson getting outside. So I really like this kid on this team.
The reason why I really like Trey Benson, and I've got him, I mean, let's face it, he's a handcuff running back. When you're going into your draft, he's a handcuff running back. But I've really got him at kind of one of the top handcuff running backs for me, because it is a situation like you said. It's also very much a situation like a Jaylen Warren type thing. The only difference is Najee is way younger and has way more tread on the tire than James Conner. James Conner is not going to play the entire season. There is absolutely a 0% chance that he plays all 18 games, 17 games. Not going to happen. I think Trey Benson is going to have opportunity. And the PPR opportunity for him, I think, is going to be absolutely wonderful. Yeah. Right now, he's right around that ADP of 112. Again, all these guys we've been talking, all these rookies, they kind of throw them in round 7, 8, 9. That's when you're going to be looking at a lot of these guys. So about round 9, he's the running back 35 taken right now. Guys around him, I mean, you're looking at, he's just in that tier below what we talked about with Jonathon Brooks. But you're also, you're looking at Jerome Ford. You're looking at, let me see here, Zach Charbonnet, Chase Brown, Chuba Hubbard. So yeah, those higher, Blake Corum as well. So in that higher handcuff realm, how are you looking at him when you're constructing a team? When do you take Trey Benson?
Running back 4. He's your running back 4. That's where you want to be really drafting him. If he's anything higher than that, even running back 3, it's going to make you nervous because if you have a bye week, if you have an injury, that means you are really light at running back. So for me, it has to be your running back 4 here with beautiful upside for trades back half of the year, especially if James Conner goes down. Guys, if that happens, I wouldn't even fucking wait. What I mean by this is raid his ass. Because what if he bombs? What if he has the rookie, the rookie-ness kind of happen to where, yeah, he definitely looked like a rookie out there. Or, man, we expected more. All of a sudden, that value drops drastically. So draft him at your running back 4. If something happens to James Conner, trade bait that dude all day long and send out 1,000,000 of them because you could end up getting a really good tight end. You could end up getting a flex piece for receiver. Shit, you could even package up and get a receiver 2 or a running back 2 to help you out. So for me, John, I love drafting Trey Benson, not for anything other than seeing what he can do back half the year and some awesome fucking trade value if something happens to trade James Conner.
Well, let me ask you this. If you draft James Conner, are you coming right back a couple of rounds later and looking at picking up Trey Benson as the handcuff?
No. And the reason being, John, is because there's certain times to where I will do that. Like think of Nick Chubb with Jerome Ford. I would do that. Think of years ago, or a couple years ago, Dalvin Cook with Alexander Madison. I would do that. This here, there's not enough floor here for me. Because if you end up having to take that of James Conner, which, John, I think correct me if I'm wrong, it's going to have to be 3rd round at this point. 3rd, 4th round for James Conner. If that's the case, you got to figure out somebody else because even if James Conner gets hurt, John, you're plugging in Trey Benson. Yeah, we're high on him, but what does that actually mean in terms of his floor? I think that he's going to be a better dynamic piece than he is a true 3-down back for his first rookie year. And so that's why I wouldn't necessarily be targeting Trey Benson just because I have James Conner. Comparatively speaking to when I had Nick Chubb, I'm absolutely targeting that of Jerome Ford. I think it's a bit different of a situation in my opinion.
I do too. It's because you're waiting for the possibility of James Conner not playing.
Exactly.
Yeah. Jerome Ford, you know that he's not going to be playing. You know he's playing the first couple of games. He's going to be the starting running back until Nick Chubb comes back. We know it's going to take a few weeks. With this is a true handcuff. You're waiting for the opportunity to be able to use him. And the other thing we always talk about is draft other people's handcuffs. Don't draft your own. Draft other people's handcuffs, man. Yeah. Okay, let's talk about a guy I'm getting more and more excited about the more I watch this guy. It's Blake Corum, running back drafted by the Los Angeles Rams. He's 5'8", little firecracker, 5'8", 205 pounds, runs a 4.52 40. Frankie, talk to us about Blake Corum.
John, he has an unreal knack for making plays. Set everything else aside. You just gave the measurements. If you're a running back, that's not very good measurements. Just calling it a spade is spade. But you look at what he does on the field, it doesn't fucking matter. He led the FBS with 27 rushing touchdowns. Think about 27 rushing touchdowns.
I thought that was an error. I had to look it up just now. I thought it was an error.
Crazy. John, it's crazy. And by the way, I'm not right. We're talking Michigan here. I shouldn't even say Michigan. We're talking the team up north. We rep out Buckeyes here. But you got to give flowers where flowers are due. He ended up setting the school record for that team up north. He ended up having over 1,200 yards rushing. He also set another record, school record with 58 career rushing touchdowns. He also won the college football playoff championship offensive MVP with 21 rushes, 134 yards, 2 touchdowns. John, he has insane vision, great goal line. He doesn't have great breakaway speed, but sometimes you don't need that shit when you have some of these other intangibles. So here's the other situation, John. He gets drafted by the Rams, right? The Rams have Kyren Williams. Kyren Williams went nuclear last year. If you had Kyler Williams, more than likely you were at least in the semis or you went deep into the playoffs. Here's what happened, though. Kyren Williams got hurt this offseason. So when they drafted Blake Corum, he got quite a bit of reps in rookie minicamp. He obviously got then even more reps in that of camp itself. And then there's been a lot of talk like, wow, this kid is actually as advertised. And there's a lot of praise by Sean McVay. So the fact that they drafted Blake Corum, and I believe it was in the 3rd round or maybe it was 4th round, I'll have to go back and check, means in my eyes, man, that they're not dead set on Kyren Williams as 100% that back. You go back to Cam Akers, and yeah, right, there was some Cam Akers, a little bit of, they brought in Darrell Henderson, they had that of Kyren Williams. It was still kind of all over the place, and last year, Kyren just kind of came out of the woodwork. What this means, man, if there is an injury to Kyren Williams or something happens here, Blake Corum is not a Trey Benson. Blake Corum, in my opinion, is not even a Jonathon Brooks. Blake Corum will carry the load. And I think Blake Corum could be insane if something happens to that of Kyren Williams with the offense that they have, right? You got Puka Nacua. You got Cooper Kupp getting healthy, right? You have some dynamic tight ends. They just paid out their ass, which we'll talk about with one of the tight ends. And then they still have Higbee coming back, right? You have Matt Stafford at the helm. You have a good defense available. John, this team is so well-rounded from top to bottom that if he gets his shot, this could be insane. So for me, man, I really like where Blake Corum is sitting. Then you start looking at, okay, well, we talked about his play. What is a good comp? Who can I match with? In that comp, John, there's 2 guys that mesh together that really makes it interesting comp for Blake Corum. It's James Conner from his running style, mixed with elements of Ray Rice. I know that's insane. We're talking I get it. Okay, I get it. Let's set it to the side. Let's fucking set it to the side. And let's
which
come back.
elements exactly are we talking about here? You know, I don't think Blake
right,
Corum
no.
appreciates the comparison there, Frankie.
Well, let me tell you, the elements I'm talking about is his flashing capability in making cuts. The dude's vision and his ability to make a cut is so similar to that of what Race Ride did for that of Baltimore Ravens. It was beautiful. You marry that with the brute force running style of that of James Conner, and that's why you got a guy that set all the records for that of the team up north. That's why you got a guy that ended up winning the offensive MVP for the national championship team, right? That is the type of caliber. So for me, man, when you marry that and you look at those types of dynamics, man, I think that this guy ended up in a good situation on a good team with an offensive mind like Sean McVay that literally can do something special with this kid.
Hey, have the Rams, I think we're at the point now where we can trust the Rams with their rookie draft picks. I mean, look what they did last year. They found two diamonds in the rough, man. I mean, Puka Nacua, Kyren Williams, those guys both just exploded last year. What's really interesting in watching Blake Corum, it almost looks like a carbon copy of Kyren Williams. That's what's so unusual about this, which leads me to believe, they're not looking at getting a thunder and lightning situation. They want these guys, they want this running style in their offense, which means they're going to be utilizing them. And we saw, Kyren Williams banged up in the offseason. I think he's going to get some opportunity here, man. Now we're looking at, he is 121 off the board in ADP, running back 38. He's going around, round 9, round 10. He is in that handcuff range. So he's in the handcuff closet here, actually right in that tier with Trey Benson, with Antonio Gibson, Tyler Algier, Kendre Miller. How are you looking at him, Frankie, in your draft? I mean, do you like him better than some of those guys?
John, I'm going to draft him over all of those guys. I would take Blake Corum over every single person that I mentioned, and I get it. Tyler Algier, right? That's a name that he's going to get drafted just as a handcuff to Bijan. I get it. But I don't see Tyler Algier being used in this particular offense now with Raheem Morris, with Arthur Smith gone, with Kirk Cousins there. I don't see it. It's going to be Bijan's show. And I could see Bijan actually being much more CMC-like. And then you mentioned a few of the others, John, like Trey Benson, etc. Like, I just think that based on the situation, based on the particular handcuff, quote unquote, based on the team dynamic, I mean, John, I just think that this guy is in such a good position, and where you can take him in round 10 in a 12-man league, you have virtually no risk whatsoever. And so this is absolutely a guy that wastes that round 10 pick, wastes that round 11 pick on, and sit and see how this unfolds. Because again, We're not talking about a guy who was just good that had 900 yards. We're talking about a guy who literally aided in changing the team up north, right? That disgusting fucking blue and gold, right? Their dynamic on offense. He was a huge proponent in that, along with that of JJ McCarthy. So for me, man, this guy, I think, is being kind of slept on a bit. And I get it, it's due to Kyron Williams, but if something happens, watch out. We're going to see an explosion from Blake Corum.
All right, well, let's go. That's a good segue there, Frankie. We've got two guys we want to do a little honorable mention. Not starting. You're not going to be drafting these guys. You're not going to have to draft these guys, but it's somebody to keep in mind because at some point, this guy could have some serious fantasy value. Let's talk about JJ McCarthy. Let's keep it up with the team up north here, man, with the blue and gold. JJ McCarthy, quarterback drafted for the Minnesota Vikings. All right, he's 6'3", 220 pounds. Frankie, talk to us a little bit about JJ McCarthy and the situation he's being put into.
John, it's okay. Caleb Williams, number one situation. JJ McCarthy, real close second. You're walking into a Kevin O'Connell offense. You're walking into JJ, right? Justin Jefferson. So we're going to figure some of that shit out here. We can't have two JJs. So we got Justin Jefferson, Jet Jefferson here, right? Just getting paid. You know he's going to be around for a while. You have Jordan Addison, who is, by the way, been hyped up from camp's perspective. He's been just dominating everything, which is great to see. You have TJ Hawkinson. You now even have Aaron Jones as your running back, which is a massive step up from that of Alexander Madison last year. And John, I just think when you look at the situation that JJ McCarthy is in, man, it is freaking gold. It is gold. And the only issue is that JJ was not asked to throw the ball deep quite often. It was that to, Donovan Edwards out of the backfield or handing it to Blake Corum or getting Roman Wilson involved as well, right? It wasn't anything that was really stretching the field. So that's going to be something that we're going to need to be mindful of. But here's the deal. JJ McCarthy arguably is the most mature quarterback in this draft class. John, his demeanor is cool, calm, collected. He's been a starter. He's won a national championship game. He's been in the biggest moments and has performed at the highest level. When you look at some of his metrics, they're not that of Caleb Williams. They're not that of Jayden Daniels. They're not even that of Bo Nix. But it's okay. He had 2,900 passing yards, 22 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Very efficient, actually to the tune of setting another school record, which he ended up actually completing 67.6% of his career passes. And he set a record for having the lowest career interception percentage. So, John, what does that mean? Doesn't make a lot of mistakes, makes quick decisions, not holding the ball. And so he's a great game manager. And I hate when people, by the way, I don't want to get on my soapbox, but I hate when people are derogative or say ridiculous shit about being a game manager. Because the reality situation is that's insane. If you're managing a game effectively, you're doing your fucking job. Okay, so I really like that the situation that he's in with the great coach, the great receiver core, a top tier tight end, a good offensive line, a great running back. And so I think this could be special. Now, here's the deal. What's the lookalike here? John, I went back and forth. There were so many. It was Alex Smith. And then I was like, man, it's almost there, but it's not there. There was a few others that I was looking at when I was watching film, and one guy hit me, and he's recent. It is Brock Purdy. Because Brock Purdy hasn't been asked to do anything outside of his wheelhouse because of the mind of Kyle Shanahan. Kyle Shanahan does so many different things to put Brock Purdy in a good spot because he has the talent around him to do so. And now you look at what JJ McCarthy is going to be able to do potentially with that of Kevin O'Connell's offense, knowing that it's a spread style offense, knowing that they're going to be able to have Aaron Jones now as that solidified back, and the route trees that they're going to be able to run. John, this is truly an awesome comparison for this. So again, I'm not saying that he's going to come out and light up the world like Mr. Irrelevant did, which was honestly, nobody saw this coming, but I'm saying there's a path forward for that and the division that they're in. So you mix that with everything else, man. JJ McCarthy could be interesting. I'm not saying he's going to be blowing it up in the fantasy realm, but from an NFL play standpoint, he may just do enough to get the Vikings over the hump and into the playoffs.
All right, sounds good. All right, Frankie, let's talk about our last guy here. We've got a running back, very interesting running back. Running back for the Buffalo Bills, it's Ray Davis. Okay, he runs a 4.52 40, 5'8", 211 pounds. Talk to us a little bit about Ray Davis.
This dude is fun. This dude is stocky, short, brute force. He is a train wreck running at you, man. And the thing is, he always seems to fall forward. You see backs like that, like Zeke back in the day, always falling forward. Derrick Henry always falling forward. Nick Chubb, and I'm not comparing them to those particular players. I'm saying he's always falling forward like that. John, this is also a guy that is a true 3-down back. Very few running backs anymore coming out are actually pure 3-down backs, and that's what you're getting for a Ray Davis perspective. He has soft hands, right, to the tune of he had 33 receptions, 323 yards last year, and 7 receiving touchdowns. By the way, he also tied a single game record, John, with 4 touchdowns against that of Florida. He had 26 carries in this game for 280 yards. Then you look at what he did from just the pure rushing perspective. Of course, the entirety of last year. He had over 1,100 yards rushing, 14 touchdowns. John, this guy knows how to get into the end zone. And what's interesting is, okay, well, where is he heading into? He's heading into Buffalo. What is fascinating is that they took this guy knowing that James Cook just had a career year. But when you look at what happened to Buffalo over last season, they ended up having Ken Dorsey as their OC. If you remember what was going on, Gabe Davis was having career games. Stephon Diggs was a top 3 receiver for the first 8 games. And then when Ken Dorsey, quote unquote, maybe had been putting too much on Josh Allen's plate, they kicked him to the curb, brought in Joe Brady. Once that happened, James Cook skyrocketed. They started going away from a more spread field, more away from checking it at that receiver 1-2 spot, to now instilling the round game, which is opening up the receivers in this standpoint. So with that being said, Ray Davis could be amazing handcuff for that of James Cook. And what's really cool is he dominates goal line. So when you think about Josh Allen, where he's been really impactful, has been on that 1, 2, 3 yard line to where you know he's getting the ball ex Cam Newton style. This is where they might be able to run some interesting plays to now have the expectation Josh Allen's going to be there. But actually, I'm going to give it to my new brute guy who has a lot of tread on the tires, ready to rock and roll and get it in the end zone with Ray Davis. One other call out too is, and I would be remiss if I didn't say this, he's the first college player to ever run for 1,000+ yards, or actually have 1,000 total yards plus at 3 different universities.
Wow.
Started off at Temple, went to Vanderbilt, Kentucky. Guys, that means that he can dominate in any type of division. So when you look at a comp, John, to where, okay, what kind of guy could actually do this? Javonte Williams. Javonte Williams and his run style at UNC when he came over to the Denver Broncos, it was exactly like that of Ray Davis. And so I think that if he gets an opportunity alongside that of James Cook, and this is one, John, that I could see them doing a little bit of both. James Cook a little bit from the speed, Ray Davis more goal line. I don't see it necessarily being Ray Davis is a 1 and 2 down and James Cook is a 3rd down. Nothing like that. I'm talking gameplay, situational. Where are we in terms of the football field? That's the key difference. And so I think that, man, this could be really cool as a late round flyer that you just sit on, you get them cozy and warm in that last bench spot, and you wait and see how this performs.
I love it, man. I mean, this guy does have a good opportunity. You're right. It's not necessarily a handcuff. It's going to be a guy that you're going to draft as a handcuff because you can't really play him. You're going to have to hold on to him.
Yeah.
So look at your roster construction. I mean, this is a guy that will sit on your bench for quite a bit. But God forbid anything happens to James Cook, this guy's value just completely skyrockets.
Yeah.
But I think you're right. It kind of a thunder and lightning situation. Look what Buffalo's done. They've tried exactly. They're going to focus more on the run, and they don't want to put all of that on James Cook. He's not that type of back.
Or Josh Allen.
Or Josh Allen exactly. And look what they've done in the past. They've tried to bring in older guys who lost a step that could just be that guy inside the 10 zone and try to get in the end zone, with Damian Harris, Latavius Murray. They keep bringing these old bigger, backs
Fournette
in.
towards the end.
Leonard Fournette. Yeah, exactly.
How about that?
So now they're switching. Now we've got a rookie in that position with juice, with explosion. So I think it could be really interesting, Matt. I think it's going to help. It'll be a little bit annoying for James Cook, for sure.
Totally.
But I think it's going to help keep him on the field longer also.
Yeah.
I think it makes his opportunities more valuable rather than him having to tote the rock and carry the offense.
John, does this change your perspective on drafting James Cook as your running back too, as a starter, or maybe you go zero RB strat and or pseudo zero RB strat and you draft James Cook as your one? Does that change anything for you in that standpoint?
I don't love James Cook as my one. Absolutely not. And if I did draft James Cook as my one of my last picks, I'd probably look at taking the backup here. It's just one of those situations where I'd want to make sure to have that locked in. But yeah, it makes me feel good about James Cook as my two. You get James Cook in fourth round, maybe end of the third, middle of the fourth, something like that. I feel totally good with that. Absolutely. Yep. All right. Well done, Frank, my friend. Always love the detail and the work you put in for these rookie reviews. Thank you so much, brother. You're amazing, man. Don't forget, everyone, you can follow us on social media on Facebook, Twitter, Frankly Fantasy Football. I know you all listen everywhere podcasts are found, Apple, Google, Spotify, all of that. Don't forget, go to YouTube, guys. We've got good enhancements this year to our videos. Much better experience for you watching it on YouTube. Please subscribe, like, comment, share. All of those things help our channel. We really appreciate everything you guys have done to help us grow this channel. Frankie, what are we looking at for our next episode, brother?
Guys, tune in. We left you hanging with some of these amazing receivers, and we are not just going to be talking about the big three being Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, and that of Rome Odunze. We are going to get much deeper to help you understand when to draft these guys and the implications if you do. Stay tuned in on this next episode.
May the fantasy gods smile upon you. Bye.